Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about connecting a Flutter application to our identity server that we've been building throughout the series. If you're a Flutter passerby and you're like, what the heck is an identity server? It's a authentication provider in ASP.NET Core. So if you don't do much C#, you're probably not going to benefit too much from this video other than using the Dart OIDC client. And also, I'm a Dart and Flutter noob, so don't expect me to teach you anything in that regard. Okay, this is more about the OAuth and OpenID Connect examples of using them. All right, so let's get started. Here we have a quick start. I'm also same as in my Xamarin tutorial. I'm expecting you to have all of this stuff set up. So this is just a sample application, and if you know me, I don't like comments, so let's go ahead and remove all this stuff before we begin. I want to remove that bit, this bit, and this, and this. This is the sneakiest comment. These are not comments, and these aren't comments, but they look like. Okay. So here's our bare bones application. What we're going to take a look at next is the terminal. In one terminal, I already have my API running, right? So this API is secured by our identity server. And the reason it has the IP mask there is for the reason I explained it in the Xamarin videos. But for those who didn't watch this, I'm going to explain this again, okay? So what you do is you go into your command prompt, you type in ipconfig, and you get your IPv4 mask address, right? And you can grab this address and host your API and identity server on this address. And the reason we do this is because the Android emulator has its own local host, and that poses a couple of problems with connecting to a website running on your local host on your machine, okay? And we're not using the Android 10.022 proxy because then it messes up the address of the authority for the client and the API. So they see the same authority, but the authority lives on two different addresses, depends on what you look at it from. So from your API, the authority will be on localhost. From the client, the authority will be on 10.022, and that can pose problems as well. So we're just going to use the local IP address for our API and for our identity server. Now, identity server isn't running yet because we will need to add a client configuration for our Flutter client. But first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to set up all the libraries and packages, and then we're going to start the application, because usually when installing new packages, you need to restart the application anyway. So first of all, I want to get all the code set up, and then we're going to start running it and taking a look at what we've got. So open up a browser of your choice. I'm using also DuckDuckGo as my search engine, just so it's extra hard mode to find my solutions, all right? And makes me a little bit reluctant using the search engine for my. I would rather look at the source code than go to the search, right? So what we search for is the formula that I have given is you type in your tech stack, OIDC, client, right? Tech stack is Flutter, OIDC, client. There we go. Search for it already. You can see I have clicked on a bunch of stuff to look through a bunch of solutions, but the first package is pretty much what you want. So OpenID client, let's go ahead and click on the installing tab. We want to use this package as a library, so we grab this dependency. We go back to our project, pubspec.yaml. Below this package in the dependencies section, we put this here and we close it. Okay, we get the dependencies, so this is going to install all the dependencies, and while it's installing, you as you'd usually embark on this journey on your own, you would read through the readme, changelog example, you'd try to understand what every line does, okay? I've already done that journey myself. I'm not going to be explaining too much here. I'm just going to show you how to set it up. This is the format of these two episode 21 point videos, right? This is just me showing you, because everybody's asking me, how do I connect it to the identity server? Like, just need to find an OIDC client, okay? So here, usage example on Flutter, right? So we're going to grab whatever functionality is in this function, and we're going to go ahead and create our own adaptation of this. And I'm seeing they're using another package here, and we're also going to get the package as well in a minute. But after copying that, and after this has finished installing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an auth function, which is going to authenticate, and I'm going to paste everything into here. And because this is awaitable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put async here. Next thing is the issuer. Now what we can do is we can just go ahead, grab the imports here, go to the top and put them here. We'll remove the comments. For the URL launcher, we don't have the package, so this is what you do again. But advanced techniques, right? This is how you become a consultant. Go ahead, type in the language for which the package exists, and then the package name, and then the first result from the search engine, it gives you this package. And then you can go to the installing section, and it tells you the version that you want to install. So you grab that. Go to here again to your PubSpec YAML and you import it. Okay, no biggie. You close it. The IDE tells you don't even need to write any code. You just copy paste and it tells you to update. Everything's already done for you. But yeah, anyway, so we're here. Looks like we still have some errors. Like, well, I'll have to write some code, right? This is why we get paid money. So what is a URI? We go to discover, press F12 to go here. It's some URI type. We press F12, we see it's a URI. So we find the constructor. So here's the constructor. We go back to main Dart and we take a second look. What is this function? Issuer, discover. So this part wants to connect to the well-known discovery document. Okay, this is the route that's defined in the OpenID Connect specification. Every OpenID provider is going to have this endpoint. It's /wellknown/OpenID-configuration, right? So our identity server has that. We just need to put a URL for our identity server. Now, if I go to the terminal ls to list stuff in here, I have the properties folder where the definition for where I'm hosting my identity server is. So I can do cat to basically output the files. I'm saying this for people who are not familiar with the Linux system. So tab twice to try to complete. It tells me there are two things. I don't know which one you want, so I just do prop. It then knows, and then in there, if I don't know, I can do ls to see what's in there. Okay, that's nice. Launch settings, I can then do L tab launch, and I can see my launch setting. And here for the profile, I am setting HTTPS and the IP address and the port number. So these are the three things we need. We need a schema, host, and port number. Okay, and we're also going to be using HTTP. We're not going to be using HTTPS. You don't want to be using HTTPS unless you know how to generate your own certificate authorities and sign your own certificates, and installing that certificate authority on both your PC and Android. I have not figured out an easy way to do this yet, because if there is no easy way, I'm not doing it. Okay, and once I figure out an easy way, I will make a tutorial about this and I will upload it into this playlist. So subscribe if you want to see that one, or join the Discord channel and be like, yo, tell me when this is out and I'll make an announcement. Okay, but anyway, this is where we're hosting. We're going to be using the HTTP part. We're not going to be using the HTTPS part. Okay, so we clear that, and actually we can scroll back. This is not a real shell terminal, and we can hack around. We can go ahead, copy this address, put it here for reference, so it's a little bit easier to look at. And remember that the URI type was URI, so we create a URI, new URI, and then we're going to pass stuff in the constructor. Again, if you get what's in the constructor, you can go into the URI object. You can see string schema. We need the schema, host, and port. Port is int, everything else is a string. So we can grab schema, and schema is HTTP. Next thing is host. Copy this, And next thing is port 5000. Okay, so this is the URI. We pass it into the discovery document. Cool. So this will know how to get the discovery document on its own. Next thing is the client ID. Now this is the part where we need to set up the client. This is the part that we haven't done yet. Okay, so in my identity server, again, I can list the files that are in there. I can see the configurations, yes. And for my next trick, I'm going to use Vim to edit my configuration and add a client, right? So we can go full screen. We can do vconfo configuration, and there we go. We're inside Vim, the legendary. Only hackers know how to use this one, right? But you can get away with knowing, I think, the I command, which is basically insert. So you can actually write like a normal editor, and then you write and quit. So you can actually save the changes that you've written. So only two buttons that you need, right? So I'm going to be copying the WPF client. So I've scrolled down here. I'm going to go over the properties in just a second. So I'm just going to copy. Scrolly wheel doesn't work here. I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to press I. I'm going to press comma. I'm going to press enter to a new line. And here I am. So I'm going to go back to new client. I'm going to tab it a couple of times so it's aligned, and press escape. Cool. This new client ID, this is the identifier. ID stands for identifier. We want to change the WPF part, so we insert and change this to Flutter. Press escape. Cool. So the reason I give it Flutter is because this is for a Flutter app, and this is what I'm going to use here. So I'm actually going to drop this down, and on the Flutter, on the client ID here, I'm going to put Flutter, so you just know that that's what it relates to. Okay, open up the terminal again. Allowed grant type is code. Require PKC, so we're using code flow with PKC. That is fine. If you want to know more about that, watch my previous videos. Require client secret. Flutter is a public client, so your client can get reverse engineered, so there is no secrets on there. Next thing is the redirect URI. So what do we put as the redirect URI? It's still going to be localhost, and this is generally the case with in-app browsers. And basically, if we drop this down, we will see this authenticator function, and it's setting the port 4000 here. So it's still going to be localhost, but on port 4000. Okay, so let's go ahead, open up our terminal again, and we're just gonna delete the sample WPF app route. And what we will do is actually put port 4000 here. And for the redirect URI, we actually want to do the same thing, okay, except put a slash on the end for the redirect URIs, because that's a route, and allow course origins as an origin. We're not going to have a slash, okay? So that's that. For the allowed scopes, we allow OpenID scope, and we allow API 1, and then allow access tokens via browser. We're using it in a browser, so this is set to true. Require consult false. It's basically before you get your access token, or before you give your access token to this client, it's basically, do you want this client to know this information about you? So do you allow IdentityServer to give out this information? We didn't implement that, so we don't have that. Okay, so changes are complete. Colon WQ, boom, enter. If you have a notepad editor, you can go ahead, open that, use that. I am just showing off at this point. So that's done. Let's go ahead to .NET run to run the identity server, and let's see if we can bring up the sign-in page on our Flutter application. Okay, so that is running there. You can go ahead and take a look at the well-known endpoint. I'm not gonna do that. So next thing, so we set the client ID. This is the function for, I mean, the comment says it right there, create a function to open a browser with a URL. Next thing, scopes. So the scopes that we have specified, OpenID and API 1, and this is an array. So we're gonna put this into an array. Oh, come up, just like that. Then we authorize, then we close the web view, and then we return the user get info. So this is the user info endpoint. So we actually go ahead and make a call to the identity server to get more information about our user. Okay. So let's go ahead and store this in a separate variable so we can actually take a look at it. And I am going to put a breakpoint here. And now what I want is I want 2 buttons, but I think at this point it will be a little bit more satisfying to see those appear, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna press the debug button here so we can actually run the application and see it hit the breakpoint. So here is the application. We can press the button to increment the counter. This is this widget here, and let me drop this down so it's a little bit easier to see. It's this floating action button, so it's right there at the bottom, and essentially just a widget. On press, we execute this function, right? So we kind of want to do the same. We want to add a button, and then we want to bind an onPress function, and we just want to log in first. Okay. So in this array, what we want to do is we want to remove these 2 text bars. I'm going to search for a button. So what kind of button would I want? Outline button. I think that's an okay button. We're going to set the child of text to, this has to be a widget as well. And in the constructor, we will say login. Save that, and we should get the login button. Okay. So we have the login button, it's grayed out. I think that's because we don't have the onPress function, so we can go to the onPress function here, and we can bind our auth function to the onPress event. Okay, I think it's an event. Anyway, by the way, I think I already mentioned it. I don't know much about Dart or Flutter, so feel free to correct me in the comments. You guys have free reign here. Okay, so let's go ahead and press the login button, and we'll see what happens, right? Okay, so this is what the login page looks on our identity server, and for the sign-in, for the username we have Bob, and for the password we have password. Very secure. Next thing, press sign-in, and nothing has happened. We essentially got redirected back to the sign-in page. So what that usually means is that the authorize endpoint is hidden behind authentication as well. So you need to be authenticated before you hit the authorization endpoint. And if you try to sign in and then with the redirect, you're gonna go to the authorization endpoint. And if you're redirected back to the login, that means you haven't actually been authenticated, okay? And with Chrome, it happens for a couple of reasons. So another thing we can confirm is we can open the terminal. We can take a look at what the identity server is saying. So since we're hitting the login page here, this is probably the 2nd time we're hitting it. So scrolling up and up a little bit more, we can say showing login user is not authenticated. So we can see all the information here about our user. And before that, maybe somewhere here, we could see the actual login that we performed. So we did the first login. It then tried to redirect us to the authorization endpoint, and it basically has the information about the client that is connecting to the identity server, or that's trying to authenticate, but basically bottom line is we're not allowed to authenticate. Okay, and the login was successful because there are no errors about the login, and this is Google Chrome specific issue, and I'm actually not suicidal to attempt to fix this in Vim. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm gonna Control C. I'm going to open the Explorer here, and for the identity server, I'm gonna actually open an instance of Visual Studio, and with the help of some IntelliSense, hopefully get this issue sorted. And basically, to explain what the actual issue is Google Chrome blocks secured cookies from being created on HTTP. So we have to change the type of the cookie that our identity server is going to deal out, so it's actually is going to stay in the browser. So again, we'll have to tweak it with the environment, but if you do manage to get your own certificate authority and install it on both devices. Basically, if you get the HTTPS environment sorted, you're good. You probably don't even need to watch this video then. You're probably quite experienced at that point. But nevertheless, we want to go into the identity server startup, and this is primarily a cookie configuration. So we're going to go all the way down here, and in the configure function, what we want to do is we want to say, actually, before we serve, so after use identity server, we're going to say if environment is development. So if we are in development, we're going to be in HTTP, and this is where we want to use a cookie policy and submit new options into there. So I think it's cookie policy options, yep. And in here we want minimum same site policy, and we can actually, let's leave the namespace, and we want to set this to lax. I'm not entirely sure what this means for the cookie world. I just know that it has to do something with HTTPS. Okay, so I'm gonna minimize that just in case we need that again. We can use .NET Run again to start up the identity server, and I'm gonna minimize that and wait for that to spin up again, so we can press back meanwhile. And let's actually open this up. So it looks like this has started, so we can press login again. We can see a bunch of logs going here. So again, Bob, password, sign in. And now this window will automatically close. We have hit the breakpoint at this point, and we can go ahead, expand this a little bit. Let's drop it down console here. If we take a look at the user endpoint, we are going to have a bunch of stuff here. And also we can take a look at the JSON, hopefully. Actually, I realized I am taking a look at the wrong place, but essentially this is the user info is the information about the user. This is what we have allowed to expose about the user through scopes, and the subclaim is pretty much the user identifier. So that's pretty much all you're going to get here. Where are our access tokens and ID tokens? They are going to be in the credentials. So this is the result that we get from C here. And to get user info, we also get a call function on C. So C is credentials, and we have the client here, but essentially here are the tokens. If we take a look, yeah, so we have the access token, the ID token, and then a bunch of information about like what token type it is, and the scopes requested. Okay, so let's go ahead and extract this access token and actually use it to call our API. Okay, so I'll drop this down. I will let this play out by hitting F5. I will remove this breakpoint, and what I will do is I will actually stick the credentials that we get here by authorizing as a global field, right? So in this state. So let's go ahead and say credential. And by the way, if you want to find out the type, as always, authorize. You can see it's a feature that returns credentials, so we can grab it that way. So credential, and it doesn't have to be initialized, so I put semicolon there. Credential, sign it here, close web view, and for the rest of the stuff, I don't really need it. I don't really care about the user endpoint and the ID of the user. I will stop returning, and I will make this void. So we're not returning anything. All we're doing is storing the credentials, and the credentials, if we take a look, we will get the token response. So here is where we can get the tokens, and here hopefully if we get the token response is, or rather has, a property that it points to our access token, right? So this is how we will be able to get the access token. So close all that stuff. Let's go ahead and add a button. So a second button. Boom. Comma. For the text, we're gonna say call API, and we will need a second function. So void call API, async, because there's gonna be communication with the outside world. And this we can put an underscore to make it private. and it's void. And let's go ahead and assign this to the onPress, right? So when we're gonna press call API, we are gonna trigger this function, right? So if you're like me and you're a noob in Flutter and you don't actually remember how to what an HTTP client is in Dart, so or in Flutter, again we basically just say Flutter HTTP client, and here we see the HTTP package. I would imagine you wouldn't need to install it, but it looks like you do. So let's go ahead and grab this package. We will put it here, close this, get dependencies. And again, because I have a feeling like getting dependencies usually breaks your application, I'm going to close it and make sure that I launch it again with the debugger. While that's happening, I'm going to drop it down and I'm going to again go to the quick start while it's working through. And yeah, we have the import, we have the URL, and then we grab the response with whatever body we post there. All we really want to do is do a simple get operation, right? So let's go ahead, copy that about that much. We will paste this up here so the import stays. The other two lines, I'm going to cut that and I'm going to put them in the call API section. And now I'm going to fix this up. So the URL is pretty much the same. I'm going to open the terminal. I'm going to go to the API1 section and I'm going to grab the HTTP part again. The communication is going to happen over the HTTP part. So what endpoint are we hitting? I'm not going to show you the source code for the API1 because if you've been following along, you're going to know it. Otherwise, you're going to have to trust me. Plus, you can have the source code. It is all in the description, right? So /secure, this is the endpoint that we want to hit. We will also change this to get, and we don't really want to press Control Home, rather Shift Home. Delete this part on the end and just get the URL. Now we can also take a look at what the response is, and if we go get, we can take a look at the response, and you can see there is a body parameter there. So let's go ahead and make sure that we grab the body and extract it from the response, right? We want to be able to take a look at the body, and I will just put a breakpoint on this A just as a free field. This is just a place that I want to reach. Okay, so that looks okay. One thing is we can actually take a look. If we call the API here, the response should be 401 and not 404, so it looks like I misspelled something. So I will actually have to go ahead and check. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm gonna go here, rather create a new tab, get out of here, do a little ls, a cd into API1, ls again, cd into controllers, ls again, and cat the secret controller, and the route is rather secret than secure, so we can go ahead and tab this back down. Say secret, save that, call API again, and here we're back. So again, response 401. Okay, so we're not attaching our access token where we'll get a 401. What we want to do now is we want to attach our access token and we want to get that sweet response. Okay, that sweet secret response. And go ahead, close this down. How do you attach an access token? Let's go ahead and take a look at the get. You will also see that we can supply a map of headers as what it seems an optional parameter. So let's go ahead and define this map. Okay, so in here we will do the URL first and then we can grab the headers. So for the first one, it's authorization, and next is bearer, and here we will need to put our access token. Yeah. So to extract the access token, again, we took a look at it. It's in the credentials file, credentials variable. So we get token response. We will have to await on this, and it's probably a little bit better if we just go ahead and store the token response here. So token response, let's store it here, and var c, we will put c here, and token response, we will await on this here, because the code has its expiry time. So we want to get the token straight away. I'm expecting that's why this is asynchronous, that we're not just getting this from memory. We're going to be making a call. So we're going to get token response as fast as we can. And then once we are about to make a call, let's go ahead and grab our var access token from the token response. And grab the access token. And it seems like I don't know how to make a map in Dart. Yeah, that looks. Okay, so we get and we put the header. The type is again in the token response, and we put the access token. Let's reopen the application. So here we are. Let's go ahead and log in again. I'm just gonna press login because this is after restarting, and now I'm gonna call the API. So again, drop this down. Here we now have the access token in our state because we grab it from here. Take a look at the response, and we get a big fat 401, and that could be for one reason only, and off by one error. That's because I cannot spell bearer. Okay, it's not bearer, it's bearer. Okay, we'll save that. We will press F5 to go through the application. Save it again to make sure it's reloading. I think the debugger messes it up a little bit. Let's go ahead, call this again. And here we have the access token, the moment of truth. Open this up, 200 in the body. What is the secret message? Secret message from API 1. That is it. This will be it for this episode. I don't particularly enjoy doing tutorials on technology stacks that I have not too much experience in, because I cannot go into those little details of how all of these functions work and stuff like that. So you'll have to forgive me for that, but this is essentially how you hook up your Flutter application to your identity server and how you call the API, right? It's just about finding your OIDC client library, getting your access token, and attaching it to your requests, right? The next question is about state management. I am currently playing around with provider. There is also a Redux pattern which didn't look attractive to me, so I didn't touch it. Okay, so I would recommend to check out provider. We're not going to be covering it in this video because I don't have much experience with it, right? But this is a bare bones example anyway, right? So if you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you have any questions, make sure to join my Discord channel. I also stream on Wednesdays and Sundays, so make sure you join for that. I'm going to be doing a giveaway on that soon. And as always, I hope I'll see you in my other episodes.